Welcome back to Happy Hour Econ, where a comedian and an economist walk into a bar. I'm Lou Perez, the comedian.
And Phil Magnus, the economist.
So every 4 years, I get to pretend that I care about soccer. And let me tell you, after catching the last U.S. game against Bosnia and Herzegovina, the two teamed up to take on the U.S., I'm all in.
Tillman!
And tonight, the U.S. is joining the round of 16 against Belgium. All of this is to say, I hope this means something to you. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just blabbering. Phil, does this mean anything to you?
Well, I've never been a huge soccer fan, although, you root for the home team, and the home team is the U.S. right now. I do think that the spectacle aspect of it is interesting in the sense that, it gives people something to celebrate. It's a different sport that's on in the bars, and it's a different customer base that's coming out to see the games. But you also still have the same problems associated with major sporting events. Quite a bit of it draws on public support and subsidy and kind of these false claims that it's an economic booster.
Well, something that I found really interesting is, you're talking about a world competition where there are a lot of rivalries, heated rivalries, unlike the show Heated Rivalry. Who knows? But who knows what's happening behind the scenes. But a lot of rivalries, some of them, centuries old. But there's one thing that I think is really bringing kind of the world together for this World Cup, and that is the United States. The fact that the United States is one of the hosts. We have the U.S. hosting, Canada, and Mexico.
Right, as a North American.
Yeah, I don't hear anything about Canada. I don't hear anything about Mexico. All I hear and all I see are, foreign tourists coming here and just falling in love and being amazed at this beautiful thing we call America.
Well, this is one of the funny things about it, because right before all the World Cup stuff started, there was kind of this internet debate going on over whether Europe or the United States was like more economically abundant, was a better place to live, better quality of life. And, people were pointing to statistics from the United States. We have a much higher GDP per capita than most European countries. Even our poorest states, like Mississippi, is almost always at the end of that list, has a higher GDP per capita than major European nations that we think of as kind of like our economic peers in that sense. So people were pointing to the statistics, and then you had some on the left, like Paul Krugman, jumped in and said, no, there were other metrics of lifestyle in Europe that clearly make it superior. They're also better on climate change and all these long-term policy goals and stuff that they purportedly have. Yet here we have the World Cup, and all these tourists are coming to the United States, and one of my favorite things about it is they're posting on their social media feeds in awe and amazement at stopping at the Buc-ee's gas station, because they've never seen anything like it. And I think it's several people have made this point. It settled the debate pretty conclusively in favor of the United States, that we have better stuff, more abundant, it's cheaper. Generally, lifestyle here has many, many advantages over kind of the snooty European approach that was being touted in triumphant ways before this sporting event broke out.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I did a little tour. My chaperone, my driver, the producer who was putting the whole thing together, insisted that I go to a Buc-ee's. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not really interested. And
he's like, no.
He insisted that I go. And I think technically it may have been kidnapping, because it was his car that I was in. He did have a firearm on him. It was Texas. And he made sure that I went and I experienced Buc-ee's. And they're very big. They are humongous.
It's at the Walmart gas stations.
The vibe that I'm getting is that every European who's experiencing Buc-ee's is experiencing it in a voluntary state. There was no kidnapping, no ransom note or anything like that. Getting back to the idea of the subsidies and that sort of thing, is this World Cup a good financial decision, at least for the United States? And can we even know that right now?
Well, I know several sports economists that are chomping at the bits to start getting data coming out of the World Cup. And, they track things like how many hotel rooms are filled in certain cities. Is there a noticeable spike in consumption at food venues and stuff around the stadium, things like that. So there are all sorts of metrics, and you can compare them against what's the normal baseline. And what this really does is it actually teases out that the purported benefits of sporting events are not always uniformly positive. There are other trade-offs that go into the mixture. And oftentimes on the net, if we look at past sporting events, so the Olympics is the classic one. When a city invests in upgrading all its stadiums and upgrading its infrastructure specifically for the Olympics, it looks like a boom of economic activity right around that short period of a couple of weeks when the event is taking place. And then 6 months later, the stadiums are in disuse. A year later, whatever they built for it is falling apart, and they have like this this unused facility that's just kind of looming over there in a state of decrepit maintenance. And this has been a recurring theme for public investment in sporting events. You also see it in the some of the longer term venues when cities invest in building a stadium to attract a sports team there, and it ends up, for the lifetime of the stadium, you're spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of public resources to sustain this thing, really for kind of the vanity project of having a sports team. And it's always been, well, look at all the jobs this is creating, of both from the construction and then from the tourists that are supposedly going to come here. But they never consider the opportunity cost. What else could have taken place in the absence of this public investment? And where does that investment get stretched out over decades and decades of publicly financed and serviced debt vis-a-vis this immediate expenditure of, hey, you've got a new hockey team or a new baseball team for a couple of decades?
And also, the fact that we're about to celebrate 250 years. One thing that I'm kind of disappointed with is the lack of very big events. And I really wish that, more Americans would have stepped up and put on bigger concerts and stuff like that. I just feel like maybe there isn't a price point you can put on just kind of the joy that I've seen with surrounding the World Cup. Yeah. I kind of want that joy to also infest
the July 4th. Yeah,
exactly. The celebration. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place.
All right. But see the pictures of the giant America State Fair thing on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and it's thus far it's been fairly empty. Not many people showing up for it. Some of it's kind of campy. It has like these mock-ups of Trump's triumphal arch that are done in cardboard and plywood, and some of them are reportedly falling apart. So yeah, you see some of that. It's kind of underwhelming. The caveat being there, the July 4th itself is a much more narrow event. You got this World Cup thing that goes on for a couple of weeks, whereas the celebration, the fireworks, that's one evening. So maybe we'll see something big.
And we have to be on the lookout because who knows what the British have up their sleeve. It's been 250 years. They had another practice run in 1812, and anything could happen. So stay alert.
They burned down the White House in the War of 1812. A few military blunders there. They left the Capitol undefended, and then the Brits tried to move in, but. Yeah.
So if you see something, say something. If you see something odd, like an Englishman leaving a tip, then you know to call the authorities because something's afoot. There are details about the United States that maybe it's kind of like a fish in water, where I'm the fish in the water, and I just don't really recognize how different we are and how how special we are. And if you look at some of the details coming out of the World Cup celebrations, there was an article about the TSA warning travelers not to pack ranch dressing in their carry-on. And I know a lot of people like ranch. It's off if you order buffalo wings in a lot of establishments, you get a choice between ranch and blue cheese. Yeah. I'm a blue cheese guy. I'll go blue cheese with my wings, but I really didn't know that ranch wasn't something you could find outside of the borders of the US.
It's a scarce commodity overseas, and so they're packing that up and taking it abroad. I guess Americans going to do the same thing in return. Maybe we buy tea from the British or something and pack it in our suitcases. But yeah, TSA doesn't like the liquids. I can say, just traveling around Europe, ranch dressing and ranch flavored things are far less common. They have some odder dipping sauces and things that they have over there. The Europeans, they like to put mayonnaise on everything. Including things that you wouldn't think of suitable for mayonnaise. But they get here and it's like, oh, ranch dressing, it's on every grocery store counter. let's carry it back home.
Perhaps we'll change things to "In Ranch We Trust."
America's great export to the world.
When you look at all the controversies over U.S. aid and Doge, it's like, man, this whole time maybe we could have improved the well-being of the world if we were just shipping ranch around the world.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just going to open up markets too. I mean, is Big Ranch just really excited over this over this idea?
This is our moment, but at the same time, we have a trade war ongoing with many parts of the world over tariffs and other economic policies. So I don't know. There's the question: do we get retaliatory tariffs from Europe on ranch dressing?
Well, if anything, that headline will be hilarious.
Yes.
More to the cultural exchanges. Who knew that free ice and free refills of soda?
I can refill this 1,000 times.
And friendliness too. Apparently, Europeans are like, oh my goodness, the Americans are friendly people.
Yeah. They're like, it's kind of dispelled some of the stereotype that's come about from, the United States doesn't always have the best reputation, particularly in its foreign policy with the world. It kind of has a gung-ho cowboy attitude, and it's perceived as if the United States throws its weight around and just kind of does whatever it wants. That's a reflection of the politicians much more so than the people. And yes, when you have tourism coming over here, you get more of the direct cultural exchange, and people are saying, hey, these Americans are nice. This is a really nice place to visit. There are things that we are discovering here that we didn't know exist. And the same thing happens when we go abroad to other countries. It's a much better and more direct cultural exchange than what you pick up through social media watching from afar. I was just in Europe a couple of days ago, and again, you see upfront and personal interactions with human beings that you wouldn't otherwise have. And it does have a uniting effect, kind of a binding effect that, hey, there's a broader sense of humanity here. And a lot of that comes from the economic exchanges, the fact that we are trading and purchasing and participating in each other's economies.
I'm a little down to hear that, Scotland has been knocked out of the World Cup, because I think one of the really fun things about that was basically the Scots went to Boston and kind of like took over like a block and took over a bar, and it was all definitely a drink fest and a lot of song and cheer, and they have to go back, and it's like, oh, you're the people we want here.
Yeah, it's I mean, who knew that soccer hooligan culture had kind of this endearing characteristic to it. And I was over in the UK when all the Scottish festivities were happening in Boston. So they were reporting on it from the news. It's like, hey, we've moved part of our culture over to the United States. And you had, they're taking over bars. They have this tradition where they celebrate sports victories by going around and putting traffic cones as hats on public statues. And this started happening all over Boston, apparently. So the John Adams and the George Washington statues from the Freedom Trail suddenly have a traffic cone hat on them. And it's like, oh, this is like a part of soccer culture where they've celebrated their victories. And there's something fun and frivolous and endearing about that.
And it's such an easy origin story. We all know how exactly that happened. Some guy was drunk. He saw a traffic cone. Yeah. He picked it up. He put it on a statue, and boom, it takes off. And I definitely prefer that. I prefer putting traffic cones on statues as opposed to pulling down statues.
Exactly. It's just the right level of not being overly serious. It's something that I think a lot of people can appreciate.
And this goes out to all of our listeners out there. If you guys could come up with, what were your favorite moments of cultural exchange at the World Cup? I'd love to hear it. One of my favorites was definitely watching like Japanese tourists try Texas barbecue for the first time.
That's your first ever bite of Texas barbecue. What do you think?
Amazing! Hey, that's a shark. I love it.
One remark I had heard too was, good luck going back to beans and toast after trying some smoked brisket. Now that wasn't for the Japanese, but just for
that delightful British cuisine that's known for its saltiness and blandness. You add spice of the Southwest into it, and people are like, wait, there's a whole new flavor palette here.
So do you think like an event like this can change habits internationally? Like, can we kind of make the world more American?
Well, I think it's a good way of being like economic, cultural ambassadors to the rest of the world. This is the true economic value. It's not this public expenditure to attract tourists to go to stadiums and stuff like that. I think that's frivolous and wasteful nonsense. But the fact that you have people visiting the United States, it kind of takes the edge off and reminds them that there's more to this country than its politics. Reminds people that economic exchanges bring disparate human beings who otherwise don't know each other into closer contact and like a broader communion than would be the case of just yelling at each other on the internet. The fact that I have something of value to offer, I have this neat food that you otherwise wouldn't be able to access. I can sell you ranch dressing, and now you and I have a bond over food that otherwise wouldn't exist. It speaks to the ecumenicism of the market itself.
I think there is something to be said about how perceptions are created, because like we were talking about, international news carries, unfavorable opinion of Americans, but travelers are seeing something very different. The internet says we are divided, but in everyday life, things seem pretty normal and pretty joyful. And once you remove the gatekeepers or goalkeepers and see things for yourself, your perspective is going to change. And one European perspective that is changing is that of air conditioning. Air conditioning is amazing, and Europeans are learning it firsthand thanks to the United States. And we will discuss all of that next week on Happy Hour Econ.